Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being with us today. Yesterday, I had the enormous pleasure to welcome President Macron to Ottawa as his first visit to Canada as President of France. Thank you very much for being here today, and this is a wonderful visit. First, several of you will remember a few months ago, Emmanuel warmly received me in Paris. So I was very happy to receive him here in Canada, to welcome him here and to continue our work together. Our various meetings reflect our joint desire to further grow our ties, historical ties that join us, and to bring our partnership to another level. Our partnership is based on joint values and strengthened by ambitious desires for a better future for everyone. And it's within the spirit of collaboration that we held a productive meeting yesterday, during which we discussed artificial intelligence, sustainable development, trade, and of course, multilateralism. In Paris, the President and myself said we had a distinct interest in AI, and we would like to develop a joint initiative to strengthen dialogue on this topic. Without a doubt, this new transformative technology offers many possibilities and also creates major challenges for companies and for middle-class workers. Therefore, we must be prepared for this wave of change and with this new technology, so that we can fully benefit from the advantages of this evolutionary technology. We're united in our desire to move together towards a better future, and France and Canada are now making a joint statement on artificial intelligence. In the same spirit as the G7 ministers' statement last March, this document underscores the development of this technology that is focused on humans and focused on inclusion, diversity, human rights, innovation, and economic growth. Canada and France will collaborate to establish an international group with government experts, scientists, and civil society members. This intergovernmental group will become a world reference to study challenges related to artificial intelligence and to define best practices. The President and myself have agreed to strengthen our cooperation in terms of international assistance and for sustainable development. We are going to conduct joint efforts to promote gender equality, to protect the environment throughout the world. Our development policies bear these two major challenges in mind. Durable progress in terms of the economy, stability and peace involves gender equality and protection of the environment. These objectives are intertwined, and that is why we are announcing today a Canada-France action plan for international assistance and durable lasting development. This international reflects Canada's feminist strategy and France's international strategy for gender equality. This action plan will allow us to work even closer together to obtain our common objectives of protecting the environment and empowering women and girls, particularly within large international organizations. Our joint commitment to obtaining these objectives will be underscored by the G7 summit, which will take place in coming days. And on this point, I would like to stress that Canada was able to count on the participation and support of France as we prepare to assume the presidency of the G7. And President Macron's government will help to make this summit a success. So I would like to say that I'm looking forward to having Emmanuel with us during our discussions that we will have in coming days.
President Macron and I also talked about the importance of growing and strengthening the middle class in our two countries. And we believe that CETA, the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, will do just that. An ambitious and comprehensive trade deal, CETA is a model for global trade as it establishes a framework to create real, meaningful growth that will benefit everyone, not just the wealthiest 1%. By opening up new markets, businesses are able to grow and create good, well-paying jobs that our middle-class citizens need. The agreement helps to put food on the table for families while strengthening our communities. CETA came into force on a provisional basis a few months ago, and the agreement is already yielding real progress for people on both sides of the Atlantic. In 2017, after only 4 months of preferential trade under CETA, imports to Canada from France increased by 4%, while Canadian investments in France surged by 23%. Today, some 200 Canadian companies employ more than 28,000 people in France, while the French support 95,000 jobs in Canada. But what makes CETA a truly modern and progressive agreement is the way in which it reflects our values. It includes provisions to protect workers' rights, safeguard our environment, support public services, and resolve investment disputes through an improved and independent system. Indeed, CETA goes further than any other trade agreement in the world, and it represents the next chapter of a renewed economic partnership between Canada, France, and our European partners. Je salue à cet égard la création
I would like to pay tribute to the creation of the Transatlantic Fund by the Desjardins movement, which will contribute to was contributed by Export and Development Canada. This several $1,000 fund will offer funding to small and medium-sized enterprises. The economy, artificial intelligence, and international assistance are just a few of the areas where we agree. The ties that unite us are many, as are the many possibilities that are before us. The President and myself have therefore agreed on the need to establish a framework for our relations, and we've already started to establish the outline of this framework. And that's why we are creating a Franco-Canadian Ministerial Council, and it will involve the President and the Prime Minister, and we will meet every 2 years to discuss our joint efforts. In Paris, I noted that France is a nation that wants to provide momentum to progress in terms of protecting the environment, in the fight against extremism, and in gender equality. We're on the same page, and we're able to explore the various ways we can work together to realize our ambitious vision for the future. Once again, I'd like to thank particularly President Macron and his delegation for traveling to Canada, and I'm impatient to continue our work in Charlevoix at the G7 summit. Now, I'm very happy to give him the floor, my friend Emmanuel Macron. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Thank you very much for the very warm welcome yesterday and for our very friendly discussions here and also in a more private setting. And thank you very much for working together up to the G7 that will keep us busy this weekend. I'm accompanied by many ministers and parliamentarians and administrators and economic and cultural leaders, which shows how strong our relationship is just a few weeks after Prime Minister's visit in Paris. And he had a chance to speak before the National Assembly in France to discuss our bilateral relationship, but also discuss our common vision of the world. And it's a sign of everything we have to say and everything that France and Canada have built together. The first reason I came to Canada, of course, is to attend the G7 summit, and the Prime Minister and myself wanted to meet before this event. France will take over the presidency of the G7 after Canada next year, and this period is marked by great challenges. And our presidency, we have a shared ambition to work together in a constructive manner. Against this backdrop, we will have to defend strong multilateralism that we both desire in terms of international security, trade, the fight against climate change, and the fight against all forms of harassment, for gender equality. These are fights that Canada has decided to wage alongside France, and we remain resolute in this fight. It is important because on each of these topics, our world is facing unthinkable challenges that were unthinkable just a few years ago. With Prime Minister Trudeau, we looked over the major international crises to see where we were aligned, to see how we could work together with the G7, G20, NATO, the OIF. We're going to continue along these lines to favor dialogue on all levels in terms of foreign policy, the fight against terrorism, cooperation in terms of defense, and also the economy. Our political dialogue is in full flow. The Prime Minister just reminded you of this, and as is illustrated by 3 recent events. A few years ago, Canada decided to commit to the UN Integrated Multinational Mission for the Stabilization of Mali, MINUSMA. It sent helicopters and military personnel. This is a very strong commitment and very productive commitment to our cooperation that will strengthen our activities and experiences, because France is particularly committed to this region, notably through the Operation Barkhane. And I'd like to thank the Prime Minister for this commitment, which has taken a lot of political strength. Our partnership in terms of defense will allow us to foster greater proximity and solidarity. The second important event took place during the Prime Minister's visit in Paris. We signed a bilateral partnership on environment and climate. It was an ambitious partnership that sends out joint action for international organizations to reduce greenhouse gases in transportation, and we looked at carbon pricing, our policies for environmental development, and supporting green economy and promoting durable development in trade with the World Trade Organization, the OCDE. Finally, over the past 2 days, we have signed an action plan for the coordination of our actions in development assistance, and it will allow us to work more effectively, and it will help us to educate young girls, which is one of the themes. It has been over the past few years with France's work in the international sphere on this level, and also in terms of your G7 presidency. In terms of innovation, we have a long tradition of cooperation in medical research, video games, and new IT technology, and I'm particularly happy, as you announced, that we were able to agree quickly on a major initiative that France and Canada are going to launch for artificial intelligence. I think I can say that we have 2 very strong ecosystems in artificial intelligence. We have a system of researchers, entrepreneurs, and financiers. And we have a community that is very interested. People are interested in transformation related to AI, and we're interested in ethics, in protecting privacy, and artificial intelligence is developing, but while protecting our fundamental values that we share. And with this statement, we are going to launch an independent group, such as the IPCC, which is becoming a key panel, and it will allow us to move forward on scientific and technological advances, and this will raise the confidence and the understanding on this file. France trades every year 10 billion in goods and services with Canada, and all our major corporations are established here in Canada. In terms of Canadian companies, they've also invested in France with 250 subsidiaries in France, and they employ 28,000 people there. CETA is one component of the progress that we are going to support together, and it would allow us to further develop this trade, which grew by 6%, has grown by 6% since September. A lot of work has been done by parliamentarians and government over the past year to make sure that CETA came to light. And on this topic, I would like to say that our partnership was exemplary between our two teams. Your commitment and your speech at the National Assembly a few weeks ago, Prime Minister, was very clear. It allowed us to move forward, and we established a surveillance system, a scientific system, and at the end of the summer, important reports will be established to dispel doubts. Today, we're also seeing the reality of the situation, and a lot of doubts are being dispelled. And this is a win-win partnership between Canada and France. We have to be vigilant together. We have to improve what needs to be improved, and thanks to the wonderful work of our parliamentarians. But I'd like to say on this topic, we have to seize all opportunities. And through this joint work that we've established, France should be an entry point for Canadian companies in Europe. And we should be able to show our middle class, our citizens, that open policies, when they respect policies and our values, it is possible, and there's no fatalities. France and Canada will also commit further to favor entrepreneurship and investment with a structured cooperation within the France-Canada Research Fund. This will focus on key issues for our future on artificial intelligence, bioscience, health, oceans, and agricultural technologies. It will also go hand in hand with the growing mobility of the students and for research and training in both of our countries. On the cultural front, we have grown a lot of ties, and I would like our dialogue to go even further in terms of cinema, music, fashion, design, so we could inspire the world. Our two systems work closely together, and we have the same language, and our mindsets are quite similar on both sides of the ocean. So this shows the vitality and the depth of our bilateral relationship, and today we are fighting international fights together. And our work has grown in depth, and this has allowed me to announce, as the Prime Minister has just said, we're going to create a Franco-Canadian Ministerial Council that will meet every 2 years, and this is a very strong cooperation between our two countries. Prime Minister Justin, I would like to thank you once again for your warm welcome. I'm very happy to be able to continue our dialogue with you over the next 2 days at the G7. I wish you a very good presidency, and France will be there at the summit to make sure this is a strong presidency and reflects our common values and interests against the current backdrop that we both know very well. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to questions. Michel Lamarche, TVA. The U.S. President, have you both noticed the same thing, that the easy way with him doesn't work? At the G7, are you going to change your approach? Are you going to adopt a joint position? Since the beginning, I have done what Canadians have expected of their Prime Minister. I've been polite and respectful, but I've always been very firm on Canada's interests and in terms of our values as well. This approach will continue. Mr. Macron,
J'ai la même approche.
I have the same approach.
On m'a parfois reproché d'être trop amical avec le président Trump.
Sometimes I've been criticized for being too friendly with President Trump.
Nos peuples,
There
et
is
il
a
faut,
friendship
quel que soit
between
le
our
contexte,
two
essayer de maintenir ces
peoples.
liens.
We have to
La deuxième chose,
maintain
c'est
these
que
ties. Secondly,
J'ai constamment essayé de convaincre le
I
président
have
Trump
continually tried
sur
to
le
convince
climat,
President
sur
Trump
l'Iran, sur
on
le
the climate
commerce.
front, on
Mais
on
je ne suis
Iran,
pas le
on
président
trade,
Trump.
but I'm not
Donc je ne peux
President
pas me
Trump,
substituer à ses décisions.
so I can't
Est-ce qu'on
make
peut nous
decisions
reprocher
for
des
him.
décisions d'un autre dirigeant?
Can I be
Non.
criticized for the decisions of
Et
another
on
leader?
aurait pu me
No.
reprocher de ne pas me battre.
They could have
On aurait
criticized
pu
me
nous reprocher
for
de ne
not
pas
standing
essayer
up
de
to him,
convaincre.
for not to try
Ça,
to
c'eût
convince
été une
him.
faute politique.
That could have
de
been
ne
a
pas tout mettre
political
en œuvre
mistake,
pour
to
essayer
not
de faire
do
changer les
everything I
choses.
can to change
Nous
things.
avons, je crois, à chaque fois
I think
mis tous nos efforts et
we've
le poids
done
d'une relation
everything we
amicale
can,
dans la balance.
and
Et puis on
done
peut avoir
put
une
everything on the
relation
line.
amicale, franche, sincère, courtoise,
France
souriante,
has remained
et ne rien concéder. Alors je ne
polite,
sais pas ce qu'on appelle méthode
and we
douce,
haven't
méthode
given
dure,
anything up.
mais
We
je
can't
sais
talk
qu'à chaque
about the
fois j'ai
easy
essayé
way or
de
the hard
convaincre,
way,
mais
but
l'heure qui a suivi sa décision sur le climat,
after the
j'ai
decision
réagi
on
en appelant
climate,
tous les autres à
I
rester, à faire Make Our
decide,
Planet Great Again,
like everyone else, that I
que
would
à la
remain
seconde
firm.
d'après où
And-
il a décidé de sortir
and as soon as he
du
decided
JCPOA, j'ai dit que la
to
France y resterait
withdraw
comme
from
signataire
the
et nous avons créé
JCPOA,
un consensus
that the
européen
France-
et continué à
that France
travailler sur les
side,
propositions que la France avait
we
faites depuis le mois de
continued
septembre.
working on our
Et sur le
proposals
commerce,
that we put forth.
dès avant les mesures, nous avons
And on
tous poussé
trade,
au niveau européen
We've taken
pour
measures.
que
We
les
all
exemptions
have
soient données au 1er juin.
tried to establish
Et nous avons, qu'il
exemptions.
s'agisse du Canada comme de l'Europe, réagi très
Both
rapidement
Canada
dans
and
les
Europe
heures qui ont suivi la
reacted
décision
quickly in
américaine.
the first few
Voilà.
hours after
Et
the
donc,
United States
il
decision.
faut, surtout dans cet environnement,
So in
toujours
this
rester
environment,
courtois,
we have to
rester
remain
productif,
polite,
essayer de convaincre,
courteous, productive. We have to
les États-Unis dans le
try to
concert des
convince
nations,
the
parce que
United
c'est notre
States,
allié
and
historique,
of course,
et
this
nous
is
en
our
avons besoin.
historical ally,
Mais
and
sur
we
le
need
fond, nous
them.
n'avons jamais rien cédé.
And we didn't
Mais je vous repose
concede
la question à tous
anything.
les deux,
I would
sur la
like to
question
ask you
des
both
tarifs,
the
ça aura des
question in terms of the
répercussions pour
tariffs.
les employés,
Will
les
there be
travailleurs dans
impact
leurs pays
Américains.
respectifs?
for workers
Américains.
in both
Mais
of
au
your
Canada,
countries,
il y en
mostly
aura
in the
des
United States?
répercussions.
But in
Est-ce qu'à
Canada,
ce moment-là, vous pensez
there
pas
will
que les
be
citoyens dans vos pays
repercussions. Do you think
respectifs s'attendent à ce que
citizens in
vous
your
durcissiez
countries
le ton? Est-ce qu'il faut pas
expect you to take a
justement
tougher
changer
tone?
cette approche qui semble
Should you
avoir
not
plus ou moins
change
bien
this
fonctionné?
approach?
Les
which doesn't seem
citoyens
to have worked very
s'attendent
well.
à ce que leurs
Our citizens
représentants
expect their
les
representatives
défendent
to
et,
defend them
avancent leurs intérêts.
and to advance their
C'est
interests.
exactement ce que nous sommes
And
en
that's
train de
exactly
faire,
what we're doing.
comme j'ai souligné plusieurs fois
As I have
en
underscored
visite à
on
travers le
several
pays, à
occasions when I
rencontrer des
visit
travailleurs
various
dans
countries
l'industrie de
and when I
l'aluminium ou de l'acier.
meet aluminum
Nous allons être là pour
workers
les
and
appuyer.
others
Nous allons
and steel
continuer
workers.
de démontrer que
We've continued
le
to show
travail
them
qui est fait au Canada
that the work
est
that's being done in
excellent,
Canada is
essentiel.
excellent,
Il va
it's
continuer.
essential,
On va
and it will
défendre nos
continue.
industries,
We are
nos
going
travailleurs.
to defend
Mais
our
je sais
industries
aussi que nos
and our
citoyens
workers. I
s'attendent
also know
à
that
ce que
our
on
citizens
finisse par
expect
régler,
us
ces
to
différends.
solve
On finisse à
these disputes,
par démontrer
that
au
we
président
can
américain
show
que
the
ses
U.S.
actions
president
inacceptables
that his
sont en train,
actions,
de faire
unacceptable
mal à ses
actions,
propres
are hurting
citoyens.
his
C'est des
own
emplois américains qui
citizens.
vont être perdus
American
à
jobs
cause des
are on the
actions,
line because of his
des
actions
États-Unis et de cette
and
administration.
because of his
Et,
administration.
quand on peut souligner ça,
And when
on
we
voit
can underscore
qu'il y a
this,
énormément de pression à l'intérieur
well,
des
we see that there's a
États-Unis,
lot of pressure
de
within the
peut-être
United States,
réviser
and perhaps
ce propos
he will
risible que
revise
le Canada,
or review
la France,
his
les pays de l'OTAN
his statements.
pourraient représenter
France
une
and
menace à
NATO,
la sécurité
this is ridiculous to
nationale
think
des
that they could be a
États-Unis,
threat to
quand,
United
en
States
réalité,
security.
nous sommes,
In reality,
les meilleurs alliés, les
we
meilleurs
are
amis,
the closest
que
allies
les
and friends
États-Unis, ont depuis
that
longtemps.
the United States has had for quite some
Je
time.
partage totalement. Moi, je
I
crois à la souveraineté
agree
et à la
entirely.
coopération.
I believe in
Si
sovereignty
nous ne
and
réagissons pas à
cooperation.
la décision
If we
unilatérale et illégale
don't
américaine, nous renoncerons
react to this
collectivement à notre souveraineté.
unilaterally and illegal decision
Et donc,
from the
il est
U.S.
évident qu'il faut, dans ce cadre, et dans le cadre du droit
This would not
international
be
commercial,
correct.
prendre
Within
des mesures de
international
réponse qui a
framework,
été
we have to
fait par le
take
Canada et
measures,
que l'Europe
and
a-
that's what
l'Union
Canada
européenne a
has done
également
and what
annoncé.
the
Et nous
European
devons
Union has
protéger
also announced. We
nos
have to
industries, nos
protect our
travailleurs, nos
industries, our
économies, parce que
workers,
c'est ce qu'ils
our
attendent de nous.
economies, because
Mais
that's
je
what
crois
our
aussi à la
people expect
coopération,
from
parce
us.
que la guerre commerciale n'est bonne pour
trade war
personne. À commencer
Doesn't spare anyone.
pour les travailleurs américains qui vont
It will
voir
start, first of all, to
d'abord le
hurt
coût des
U.S.
matières
workers.
premières augmenter à
The
travers
cost
ces
of raw
tarifs
materials
et
will,
la baisse de
will
compétitivité
rise,
de
and
filières industrielles se
industrial
multiplient.
subsidiaries
Et
will
donc, dans ce
become less
contexte-là,
competitive.
à mes yeux, la
Within
coopération
this
est essentielle,
context,
c'est celle que permet
cooperation is
l'OMC.
essential.
Et donc,
And that's what the World
rénovons
Trade
le cadre de
Organization will allow us to
l'Organisation
do.
mondiale du commerce, rendons-la plus efficace,
Let's
plus
make
rapide,
the
permettons de gérer
WTO
mieux les
more
différends, réglons le
effective,
problème des surcapacités
allow
mondiales
it
que
to
nous
act
avons en
quicker,
acier et en aluminium,
and
comme le G20 avait commencé à l'aborder. Ce sont les bons
let's
sujets.
look at steel and
Mais
aluminum as G20 has started to do, but we need a multilateral framework.
Ne pas respecter les règles de l'OMC.
Well, if they're not respecting WTO rules, that's not good news for anyone. Prime Minister and President, you mentioned a few minutes ago the excuse that President Trump gave to justify his trade war. You said that it's insulting to think that Canada threatens the United States' security. Also, President, you also think France is insulted when it's a question of threatening American security. The basis that was used to justify these measures and trying to present them as respecting international trade law or being an argument of national security, we think that Canadian and aluminum tariffs, well, this is an inappropriate excuse, and this article that allows the U.S. President to undermine the procedures, and that is why we are going to contest this decision with the WTO, and several representatives within his government, Senator Corker, also said that this decision could be challenged.
Le débat international, il est à nous.
Regulations were not respected, and we are going to go before the WTO. Do you not think that right now the United States President, do you fear that he may not attend the G7?
On a constamment été en lien avec le président Trump.
Communication with President Trump. We've had dialogue about what we agree on and what we don't. It would be inappropriate to refer to national security as a justification for trade tariffs. His representatives have also talked about this topic, but they did not mention security. It's not really a question of national security. As to whether he will be there, we know that President Trump likes to be unforeseeable, but everything suggests that he will be there for the G7 summit, according to his tweets this morning.
Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, what are you planning to tell President Trump on trade and Iran, and are you willing to use blunt language?
I think it's been a feature of the relationship that I and certainly Emmanuel have maintained with the President that allows us to be blunt and frank, and we have been throughout our exchanges with the President from the very beginning. I can certainly speak personally to say that I have consistently stood up for Canadian interests, consistently demonstrated where we disagree, but done so in a polite and cordial context. I think that's what Canadians have always expected of me, and that's exactly what we're going to do. As I've said a number of times, we were disappointed with the American decision to step away from the JCPOA on Iran. We feel that Iran's nuclear ambitions represent a threat not just to regional stability, but to global security. And we are very pleased to stand by France and our other allies in hoping to move forward in a way that maintains the JCPOA's impetus and results as we strive to keep the world safer and Iran nuclear weapon free.
And on trade?
We will also obviously have some very robust discussions on trade. I think there are questions about what is going to be the dynamic at around the G7 table, and I can say that it'll be very similar to other G7 tables in which we highlight and discuss many things we're agreed on and have differences of opinion on other things. There's no question that on trade, on climate change, on some other issues, there will will be differences of perspective, but the role of the G7 is to provide a context to highlight the ways we work together and work through some of the differences in perspectives. I think this is a really important moment for us to come together and work on big issues that matter to our citizens and indeed to the world. Trade, security are certainly among them, as is the environment, and we will do exactly that in the coming days.
Sur le commerce,
In terms of trade,
je redirai pour ma part
I
au
would like
président Trump
to say
vient
to
d'expliquer l'un et
President
l'autre,
Trump, as we've
c'est
just
que les mesures
explained,
prises
that the
sont
measures
contre-productives, y
taken
compris pour son
are
économie.
counterproductive even for
Il y a
his
aussi une
economy.
question qui est pour moi une question de principe.
For
On ne
me,
peut pas faire
it's
la
a
guerre
question of
commerciale entre des alliés.
principles. We can't
Nous
wage a
sommes tous
trade
engagés
war
dans des
between
conflits.
friends. We're all involved in
En Syrie, en
conflicts
Irak,
in Syria,
au Sahel,
Iraq,
dans
in
différents endroits
sub-Saharan
du
regions,
monde.
in different
Nous
areas
sommes
of the
alliés,
world.
nous échangeons des
We're
informations
allies,
critiques.
we
Nos
exchange
soldats se
critical
tiennent côte à côte pour défendre la
information.
liberté et nos
Our
valeurs. On ne peut
soldiers
pas,
stand
entre
side by
alliés,
side to
dans le
defend our
contexte
freedom and
international que nous
values.
connaissons, décider de guerre commerciale.
We cannot decide in
une
such a
question pour moi de
context
principe.
on a trade war. For me, it's a question of
Et
principle.
enfin, j'essaierai de convaincre
I would
avec
try
le
to
Premier ministre Trudeau
convince him with
et
Minister
l'ensemble de nos
Trudeau
partenaires
and all of our
pour qu'on
partners
retrouve un chemin de normalisation des sujets commerciaux
to
parce qu'il faut
find
trouver
a
une
more
issue
normal
à
path
cette
on
tension
trade topics.
et permettre de convaincre, de régler
I'm
les
trying
problèmes
to
de
convince
fond
him
de nos
and
économies. Et l'un des
solve
problèmes
the
que nous
underlying
devons tout à
problems
fait
of our economies.
reconnaître et voir
I
des
want
équilibres
to
commerciaux américains
him-
qui est lié
he-
aux
to the
surcapacités
trade
dans certains domaines, je
imbalance
pense à l'aluminium
sometimes reflects
mondial,
some areas
au problème
in
de
aluminum,
propriété
etc.
intellectuelle,
There's
qui est un
also
vrai sujet du commerce
IP
mondial, et
problems,
quelques
which is a
sujets
real
où la
topic of
coopération est beaucoup plus
international
efficace
trade. And our
que
cooperation can be
l'action
more
unilatérale agressive. Sur l'Iran,
efficient on that front than it will be with the trade war.
Je
In
crois
terms of
que
Iran,
l'action que nous devons conduire
the action
vise
that we
là
have
aussi
to
à éviter
take
toute
should
escalade de
also
tension et à
try
lier deux
to
questions
avoid an
internationales
escalation of
contemporaines.
tension.
Le président Trump sera
President
avec
Trump
nous et
will be
quelques
with
jours
us
plus
at
tard
the
sera à
summit, and a
Singapour
few
pour
days
rencontrer
later
le
he'll be
président
in
de la Corée du Nord.
Singapore to meet the president
Et nous
of
serons
North
tous derrière
Korea.
lui pour le
And
soutenir
we'll
dans
all
cette
be behind him
initiative
to
essentielle
support
pour la
him in
péninsule
this
coréenne
essential
et la
initiative
dénucléarisation mondiale.
and in
Mais
the
quelle
fight for
crédibilité une
global
négociation sur le nucléaire
denuclearization.
nord-coréen peut-elle avoir
What
si nous détricotons les négociations d'il y
impact
a
will
3 ans
this
sur le
have
nucléaire iranien?
if we
Et
undo
donc,
all the good
comme
work
nous
we
voulons
did
que le
3 years
président
ago
Trump soit
on
fort et
on the
réussisse sa
nuclear file?
négociation
So
avec
if
le
he
Nord-Coréen,
does
nous voulons que la
succeed in his
communauté internationale soit
negotiations
crédible
with North
sur le
Korea,
nucléaire iranien. C'est bon pour lui.
we want him also
donc,
to remain credible
ce
on
que
the nuclear
nous
situation in
l'inviterons à faire,
Iran.
c'est dire vous n'êtes pas à l'aise
We
avec
won't
l'accord signé par votre prédécesseur,
tell him
peut-être parce
that
qu'il a d'ailleurs
you're
simplement
not
été signé par votre
comfortable
prédécesseur,
with
bon
the
tact.
a-
Mais
agreement signed by
n'empêchez
your
pas les autres d'y
predecessor,
rester
but
et ne
don't
poussez pas
prevent
l'Iran à en
other
sortir.
people from keeping it,
Parce
and
que c'est la
don't
meilleure
push
protection
Iran out
aujourd'hui
of
que nous
it.
avons.
And that's the best
Et
option we
travaillons
have
tous
today.
ensemble
We have to work
à un
all
accord plus
together
large,
on
à
a
une forme de
broader
New Deal
agreement
avec l'Iran, les pays de la région, nos
with
alliés,
Iran and
pour
countries in the
traiter
region,
du
our
nucléaire
allies,
contemporain, du nucléaire dans la
we
durée
have
après
to
2025, de l'activité
make
balistique et de l'activité
nuclear
régionale de l'Iran, c'est-à-dire en
we have to
Syrie,
look at
au
the future
Yémen,
there.
au Liban,
We have to
en
look
Irak.
at
Et donc,
what's happening in
ayons là
Syria,
aussi plutôt une
Lebanon,
dynamique
Iraq.
de travail
And
dans
we
un
have to
contexte de
find
tension.
a way to
Mais
work
n'alimentons
against
pas
a
la
context
tension collée.
that shows great tension.
Trump aides say that he's complaining about having to spend 2 days in Canada with world leaders. So what is the strategy that the rest of you have, either individually or collectively, to create productive negotiations when the leader of the most powerful country in the world doesn't really want to be with you guys?
I think, first of all, our approach has always been to seek for common ground, to find areas of agreement. And as we've seen, the fundamental challenge that we are all facing around our economies is how to make sure that everyone feels included in the success and the growth of our economies. That is at the heart of the challenge that both of us, and indeed the President and others, got elected on. And that is a central challenge that we will be discussing. It has many aspects to it, but that idea of restoring the faith in our citizens, in the work we're doing to create opportunities and growth for them, is at the heart of the fundamentally economic discussion we are going to be having. On further issues, I think it's very clear that us coming together to demonstrate the solidarity of the world's leading industrialized economies behind the President's efforts on the Korean Peninsula, which we of course support and share, behind many of the initiatives around peace and security around the world, including the development of better supports for women and girls around the world. These are things that we're going to very much work on, and we continue to remain positive about the discussions we'll be having. As we know, we'll have points of disagreement and points of agreement, but the actual fact of having these discussions is always good for the international community, good for our citizens, and good for the world.
Je suis totalement d'accord avec ce que vient de dire Monsieur le
I
Premier
agree
ministre.
entirely
Nous
with
sommes
what
très
he's just
contents
said.
de nous retrouver, de le retrouver, parce qu'il faut
We're
pouvoir parler des
happy
accords et des
to
désaccords.
meet because we have
et
to
que le
talk
G7
about what we
sert à
agree on and
cela.
what we don't, and that's
Et
what
qu'il
the
est
G7 is
particulièrement
for.
utile dans des
It's
moments que
particularly
nous vivons,
useful
parce qu'il permet
in the current
d'éviter
context because it will allow us
les
to
forces, si je
avoid
puis dire, les plus centrifuges. Et ensuite, il faut jamais
centrifugal
oublier ce
forces.
qui est bon pour nous
And
collectivement.
we also have to remember what's good for us
Nos intérêts,
collectively
nos valeurs
Our
se
interests
construisent dans
and
ce
our values
multilatéralisme, y compris
are reflected
les
in this
intérêts et les valeurs
multilateralism and even
Ça, je
US
crois qu'il faut
values.
regarder à hauteur d'histoire.
We have to bear this in mind.
Les États-Unis
The United
sont certes une
States
grande puissance
is
économique,
of course a strong
mais si elles allaient
economic power,
plus avant vers une forme d'isolationnisme,
but if they become more
d'hégémonie brutale,
isolationist,
d'éloignement
become
de sa propre histoire ou de ses propres valeurs,
far
du
from
rôle
its
qu'elle
own
joue dans les
history, its
organisations
own values.
internationales, où elle est leader, en
It's a leader.
décidant de s'en retirer elle-même,
As a
ce serait
leader,
mauvais pour les
and
États-Unis
if it
d'Amérique.
decides
Ce serait
to
mauvais pour
withdraw,
son
that would be
image,
bad for
ce serait
the
mauvais
United
pour
States.
le
It would be
pays
bad
à
for
court,
its
moyen et long
image,
terme, ce serait
for
mauvais
its
pour ses concitoyens.
country,
Ça, je
the
crois que le
medium
président
long term,
Trump
it would
le
be
sait.
bad for its citizens
Et donc,
as well. And that I
c'est
think
peut-être
President
parfois
Trump knows that.
un tweet ne résume pas la totalité d'une pensée.
A tweet
Et donc,
can't
il y a tous les tweets à lire et les discussions que nous aurons à
resume his
avoir,
entire
mais
thoughts,
vous
but we
verrez
have
qu'il
to look
sera
at all
heureux
his
d'être
tweets. But I
avec
think
nous
you'll
à la
see he'll be
Malbaie,
happy with us
accueilli par
in
le Premier
Malbaie,
ministre Trudeau.
welcomed by Prime Minister Trudeau.
Hi, bonjour, comme on dit ici, Paul
Hello.
Larouturou pour Quotidien.
As
Demain
we-
commence le G7, mais beaucoup
Well,
disent que c'est
tomorrow
le G6
the
plus
G7
1,
starts,
contre Trump. Question pour
and
tous les deux. En réponse
this
aux
is a
sanctions
question for
américaines,
both
vous
of
dites
you.
prêt à isoler les États-Unis.
We're talking about the
Comment,
G6 and
concrètement,
one
comment
plus one,
isole-t-on la première
but
puissance économique mondiale?
how can
Et
you
est-ce que
turn
vous
your
avez
back
conscience
on
que
this
Donald
world
Trump est
economic
complètement prêt à être
powerhouse?
isolé?
And are you ready to see President Trump
On a
isolated?
répondu plusieurs fois à cette
I
même
think
question,
we've
mais je suis
answered
content
this
de
question
reprendre.
several times. I'd be happy to
Écoutez,
go back to it.
Le G7,
The
c'est une
G7
opportunité pour nous de
is
se
a
rassembler
wonderful
pour avoir des
opportunity for
discussions
us to have
franches,
frank
ouvertes,
discussions,
entre,
open discussions
entre pays qui sont
between countries
depuis longtemps alliés et
that
amis,
have been allies and
pour
friends for
répondre
quite
aux
some time.
préoccupations de nos
We
citoyens,
have to discuss the
pour,
concerns of our
parler de
citizens.
notre
We have to
engagement
talk
envers le
about
monde,
our
pour
international
regarder des façons
commitments
qu'on peut travailler ensemble,
and see how we
ou
can
bien
work
pour
together
régler des différends,
or
ou
solve
bien
disputes
créer de la paix, de la sécurité, de la
and foster
prospérité dans le
peace,
monde.
prosperity,
C'est sûr qu'il
prosperity
il va y
worldwide.
avoir bien des sujets
Of
dont
course,
on va
there will
traiter. Il
be
va y avoir des
many
sujets, évidemment,
subjects
où,
discussed,
le président
and there will
n'est
be
pas
areas
tout à fait
where the
aligné
president
avec,
is not
avec
fully
les autres.
aligned
On pense
with
évidemment
us,
au changement
notably in
climatique,
terms of climate
et,
change
particulièrement
and
au commerce ces
trade
jours-ci.
recently.
Mais on a toujours
But
des façons de
there are
chercher
always
justement
ways
ces terrains d'entente
to seek agreement,
pour avancer ensemble.
to move forward
Ces
together.
discussions, ces
Our
conversations
discussions and
sont
conversations
toujours importantes
are
dans
always
notre
very
monde,
important.
et j'ai vraiment hâte de pouvoir
And
les
I'm
entamer
looking forward
avec,
to
avec nos
starting
collègues.
this dialogue
C'est
and
certain
continuing
que
it with my
chacun
colleagues.
arrive avec,
Of
sa
course,
perspective et ses
everyone has their
intérêts,
own
mais justement,
perspectives and
en se
interests,
rassemblant,
but we
à
do
tous les ans
meet
avec le
every
G7,
year
ça nous
at the
permet,
G7, and that
de
allows
remettre
us
un petit peu
to
nos perspectives
provide some perspective
de façon un peu plus alignée et
in a
de
more aligned
chercher
manner
toujours
and
à mieux travailler ensemble
to seek to
pour
work
nos
better
propres
together
citoyens, mais bien
for the benefit of
pour,
our own citizens
le monde entier aussi.
and for the entire world
Sur
as well.
nos intentions et celles du
Our
président Trump. Je
intention
crois que notre
in
volonté
terms of that
commune,
and
c'est
what
d'abord d'essayer de
President
trouver un
Trump
texte qui
wants
sera signé par tout
is
le monde
to try and find a
et par les
document that
sept.
everyone can
C'est ce qui
sign
avait
after
été
the G7.
obtenu l'année dernière.
We were
Le climat
able to
était
do
moins
so
tendu.
last year.
Je pense que
The
on fera
climate
tout pour
wasn't
aider
as
le
tense
Premier
then,
ministre
but I think we'll do
Trudeau
everything
à
to
parvenir.
help Prime
Après,
Minister
moi, je partage
Trudeau
totalement
to do
ce qui a
this.
été dit à plusieurs
I
reprises
agree
par
with
Justin Trudeau.
what Justin Trudeau
La
has just
volonté de
said.
signer un texte à 7
We
ne
want
doit
to
pas
have a
être plus forte
document
que notre
signed,
exigence
but
sur le
this
contenu de ce
desire
texte.
shouldn't be
Et je crois
stronger
qu'on ferait une erreur
than
si on
our
disait on
desire
est prêt à
to
renoncer à tout,
move
à
forward
dire
on
qu'on tient à l'accord de
files.
Paris, au climat, au
We-
commerce,
well,
pour avoir
there's
cette signataire, parce qu'à ce moment-là, on
trade,
viderait de
Paris
son contenu
files.
et de sa
We don't want
pertinence ce
to
G7.
make this
Et donc, il faut pas
document from the
être,
G7
par principe,
impertinent. We have to keep it
s'interdire
relevant.
d'avoir un
We don't want to
6+1.
drain it of
Ou
its
un mot
meaning.
fort de la présidence, que nous soutiendrons totalement.
We
Parce que
will
nous sommes
support
derrière le
any
Premier ministre
strong
Trudeau.
terms
Vous savez, à
that are put
Hambourg,
forward. But in
quand il y a eu le
Hamburg,
G20
Hamburg,
présidé
when
par
we had the
l'Allemagne, nous avons été
G20
amenés à faire
presided
un
by
19
Germany,
plus 1 sur le climat.
we
Faut
had
pas
to be
l'oublier,
19
parce
plus
que
1
les
on the
États-Unis ne voulaient
climate.
pas rappeler leur engagement
The
sur l'accord de
United
Paris, donc
States
c'est pas
did not
inédit.
want to
Et je
commit
pense
to
que
the
c'est
Paris
utile.
Agreement.
Vous dites aujourd'hui, le président
When you're
Trump
saying that President
s'en
Trump
moque complètement.
doesn't really
Peut-être.
care,
Mais d'abord,
perhaps
nul
that's the
d'entre nous
case.
n'est éternel.
But no one lives
Et donc
forever.
nos pays, les engagements que
Our
nous avons pris
countries
nous
and the
dépassent.
commitments we've
Parce que
taken
aussi, il faut bien
will
savoir une chose.
extend beyond
Nul
our
d'entre
lives.
nous ne peut, quand il arrive élu par le peuple, dire tous les engagements qui ont prévalu.
All the commitments
Ça n'est pas vrai. Il y a une continuité de
made.
l'État qui est au cœur
No,
du droit
I mean,
international.
there is a
Avec des
continuity
principes de ce droit international.
on the international
Quand nous
level.
sommes arrivés, on a parfois
And
hérité
sometimes
d'engagements
when
internationaux
we've
qui n'étaient
taken
peut-être pas au
power,
cœur de nos convictions
sometimes
pour nos pays
we've
respectifs.
inherited
Mais nous
files
les avons
that did not
portés.
reflect our
Parce que
own
il en
personal
va ainsi de la vie des nations.
convictions.
Donc, il en
But there
ira
is a
aussi
cycle.
ainsi de la vie des États-Unis
And
d'Amérique
this
comme
will
de
be
toute
the
grande
same thing
démocratie,
for the
tout grand
United
pays.
States, as with
Et
any
il y a un moment
democracy.
donné où ils retrouveront aussi le cours de leur histoire.
And they will
Mais nous ne devons pas nous désagréger.
see what's happened
Les
in their
6
history.
autres pays du G7,
We
c'est un
have to
marché qui est
remain
plus grand que le marché
resolute.
américain.
The G7
Donc il faut le regarder
together
en face.
represents a
Il n'y
larger
a pas
market than
d'hégémonie
the
mondiale
United
si nous
States.
savons nous organiser. Et nous n'avons pas
We
envie
have
qu'il y en
to
ait.
get
Moi, je
organized
crois à la
and
coopération
work together.
multilatéraliste
And I
parce
believe
que
in
de toutes les formes, je
multilateral
résiste à l'hégémonie.
cooperation.
L'hégémonie, c'est la
And
loi du
this
plus
allows
fort.
us to fight
L'hégémonie, c'est la fin de la règle de droit.
hegemony.
L'hégémonie, c'est la fin des
Hegemony
garanties qu'on
shows a
peut donner
lack
à nos
of
concitoyens qu'on les
respect for the
protège
rule of
selon
law.
des valeurs que nous
We
avons
have to tell our
défendues et passées dans
citizens
ces textes.
that we're going to protect
Et
them in
donc,
the values that we
peut-être
defend.
que ça est égal au président américain
Perhaps
aujourd'hui d'être isolé,
President
mais nous, ça nous
Trump,
est aussi
President
égal
Trump
d'être
doesn't
assis
mind that
si
he's being
besoin était,
isolated today,
parce
but
que ces 6-là représentent des valeurs,
these 6
représentent un
countries
marché
have
économique
shared values. We represent
qui
an
a cette
economic
force de
market
l'histoire
that
et qui
has the
surtout
strength of history
représente
behind it and
une
also
vraie force au niveau
represents
international.
true international
Donc,
strength today.
nous ferons au mieux, mais en tout
So
cas,
we'll do the best we can,
je
but
voudrais dire ici que
I would like to
je
say
mettrai
here
personnellement toute mon énergie
that
pour
I'll
que la
put all my own
présidence
personal energy
de Justin Trudeau
to
permette
make
au maximum
Justin
d'avoir un texte fort à
Trudeau's
7
presidency
et après d'arriver à
allowed
toutes les
to-
décisions si besoin était.
to establish
Monsieur
a
Macron, le secrétaire général de
document
l'Élysée, a dit
and
que
to make it
Collet est
strong.
visé par une plainte pour prise illégale d'intérêt et trafic d'influence après la perquisition à Bercy. Est-ce
There
que vous
was
pouvez nous
a
affirmer que jamais,
incident
quand il
in
travaillait avec
Bercy,
vous, Monsieur Collet ne s'est impliqué sur le dossier des
and
chantiers STX?
Je peux vous affirmer que je suis
Question
un
honorable
homme
for the
de
interpreter.
parole et d'engagement.
I would like to
Et
talk
que
about
j'ai
commitment.
2 engagements simples dans la vie.
I've
Je
made
ne
2
parle jamais d'une
simple
procédure
commitments.
judiciaire en cours.
I
je n'ai
never
jamais
talk about
fait.
legal
Et je
proceedings
ne
that
parle
are
jamais de
underway,
sujets
and I never
domestiques quand je
talk
suis à
about
l'international
domestic
dans des
files when
conférences de
I'm
presse.
abroad
Je ne vais
at
pas
a
commencer
press
aujourd'hui.
conference, and I'm not going to start to do that today.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Merci à vous.
Thank you.